Great. Do you want to put it on the presentation mode, Dr. Joita? All right, wonderful. Good morning, good evening, everyone. It's great to introduce our diet team at our monthly LASI-DAD seminar. So today, we'll have our diet team join us, Dr. Joita Banerjee, Dr. Arka Chitani, Dr. Claire McBoy, Dr. Daniel Logan, and Dr. A.B. Day have been leading our diet study, and it has been quite a journey. And especially Dr. Arka and Dr. Joita has been working with the field team and developing the instrument. And Dr. Claire and Dr. Logan has been building up the micronutrient database. And it has been a very long journey of over last 6 years. So it is really my great pleasure and my sincere gratitude to our diet team. So let me invite Dr. Alkachutani, who was previously a professor at AIMS New Delhi, and Dr. Joita Banerjee, who is our project scientist and coordinator for the LASI-DAD project, and let them introduce the diet project development, and then followed by Dr. Logan telling us more about micronutrient database. So with that, Dr. Joita, would you like to begin?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Jin Cook, and good morning, good evening to everyone, and Happy New Year. So this is the first first of the webinar series for 2026, focusing on the diet initiative of LASI-DAD. So I will be starting, followed by our diet leads, Dr. Alka and Dr. Daniel. So setting the context. Oh, I muted myself. So here, setting the context, now we are looking at an aging world, as everybody knows, and by 2050, we are seeing that 80%, it is projected that 80% of the global aging population will live in the low and middle income countries like India. And with aging societies are increasingly facing higher incidence of cognitive decline and dementia. So we find some evidence gap here. Research on dietary patterns as a modifiable lifestyle factor for cognitive health protection has gained momentum, but most of the studies and research has been done in the Western countries, predominantly Caucasian population with high literacy. And findings from the Western population may not translate to diverse Indian population. So we need to have our research set in the Indian context. Sorry. So, coming to the background, nutritional research in India has till now been very geographically limited, limited to some states, maybe in the south or the east. It has not been very nationally representative, especially in the geriatric population, in the older adults. Impact of nutrition on cognitive health remains unexplored. Limited evidence on diet as a risk factor for dementia has been seen. So in the 2024 Lancet Commission reports, the 14 established risk factors are there. Diet does not find a place there, but we see that diet is important for several established risk factors, including obesity, hypertension, and diabetes. Identifying appropriate and actionable areas of change in the patient's diet will improve population brain health. Now, diet and brain health, the key insights. So our food contains our food groups and nutrients that have been listed here. All these food groups like whole grains, beans, pulses, vegetables, and a host of it, and the nutrients like tocopherols, omega-3 fatty acids, folates, carotenoids, all these play a crucial role in cognitive development, memory, and mental well-being. Omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals support neuronal function and protect against neurodegeneration. Now, coming to the Indian context. So the traditional Indian diet has some unique features, though we find that with progress, migration, global travels, and manifold other reasons, this traditional Indian diet has been compromised due to more available convenient preparations. So, but the unique features are the rich use of spices like turmeric, ginger, cumin, with proven anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, predominance of plant-based foods, legumes, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, regular inclusion of fermented food like curd. In the south, we have idli dosa. In the north, we have kanji, which are all fermented food which are beneficial for the gut-brain axis. Very much researched nowadays. Traditional cooking methods preserve nutrient value and promote holistic health. So there is cultural and regional diversity in the Indian diet, and also use of some Ayurvedic principles in some of the some regions. So the relevance in brain health is, turmeric with active ingredient curcumin has shown to improve memory and reduce risk of neurodegenerative disease. It has been well studied. Nuts and seeds, source of healthy fat for brain development, and balanced vegetarian diet, low in saturated fats, high in fiber and micronutrients have these are the unique properties which may help in and have a relevance to brain health. Now, coming to nutrition in the cognitive trajectories in older adults, nutrition is likely to influence trajectories of cognitive and neurobiological change in older adults. Healthy dietary patterns appear to tip the balance towards the healthy aging and decrease risk of neurodegenerative pathologies. Now, growing evidence points to some dietary patterns. Some very well researched and studied dietary patterns are associated with better cognitive performance or and delay cognitive decline. So the main ones are the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, or the MIND diet, and to some extent ketogenic diet, which has not been studied no, very much. The Mediterranean diet, which is rich in fruits and vegetables, nuts, whole grains, legumes, olive oil, moderate use of fish and poultry, and limited red meat and sweets. The DASH diet, or the dietary approach to stop hypertension, again is rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, low fat dairy, lean protein, and less sodium intake. The MIND diet, which is a combination of Mediterranean and DASH diet, it is the intervention for neurodegenerative delay, consists of the both the Mediterranean and DASH diet, and has MUFA-rich oils. So it has been seen that mostly the first three diets are have been show evidence of better cognitive performance and delay in cognitive decline, mostly the MIND diet. Now, coming to dietary assessment methods. These refer to the evaluation of individuals or population's food intake. Accurate dietary assessment is essential for nutritional research, clinical practice, and public health initiatives. There are quite a few dietary methods, like the 24-hour dietary recall, where the participant recalls, remembers what they have consumed in the last 24 hours. Though it is easy and quick, it depends on the participant's memory, which is a bit of a challenge in older adults. The food frequency questionnaire, where the participants report the frequency and portion of food consumed over a period of time. The dietary records, the individual record all the food items they have been consuming for a period of time, typically 3 to 7 days. This again is has a high respondent burden. The weighed food records depends upon the participant weighing the food that they will consume. Again, not very practical and not useful in larger studies. Diet history, which is a very comprehensive and long interview about the consumption of food, which is time consuming, needs proper training, trained interviewers, relies heavily on memory, and maybe may have subjective reporting. The duplicate portion method, again, where the participant prepares duplicate portions of what they consume, again, not a very practical method. And the biomarker method, where measurement of specific nutrients or metabolites from biological samples is required. So among this, the food frequency questionnaire is one very important and easy and popular method in dietary studies, in epidemiological studies. So the food frequency questionnaire is a dietary assessment tool commonly used in nutritional epidemiology to evaluate an individual's habitual food and beverage consumption over a specified period, typically weeks, months, or even a year. The questionnaire consists of a list of food items with respondents indicating how often, on average, they consume each item. And the key features are they assess frequency and sometimes the quantity of food intake, covers a wide range of food and beverages, designed to reflect habitual diet over an extended period, and it is usually used for research, clinical, and public health purpose. There is another type of FFQ, the semi-quantitative FFQ. Unlike a qualitative FFQ, which records only the frequency of consumption, a semi-quantitative FFQ also collects information about portion sizes, allowing for an approximate calculation of nutrient and energy intake. So, the challenge for the LASI-DAD study group was to have a single food frequency questionnaire for the diverse older Indian population. Why the challenge? Because of, as you see on the right side, there is so much of diversity in India. There is geographical and cultural diversity, socioeconomic diversity, seasonal and religious diversity, which affects the food we take, the diet taken by the Indians. So, and the prior FFQs that have been used have limited scope as they have been used in single states, not they are not nationally representative. And the existing tools have all been validated in high-income countries. Literacy and education are barriers for self-report. And aging constraints are like cognitive impairment affecting recall accuracy. And usually the younger household members handle food purchasing or food preparation. So the older adults whom we are asking the question may not be able to give us the correct information. And of course, there are seasonal and cultural variation in consumption. So previous studies in India have employed short FFQs in geographical limited areas, developing a single comprehensive food frequency questionnaire for diverse population with varying dietary habit remains a challenge. So the LASI-DAD study group found the solution. The aim of the LASI-DAD study was to develop a brief but adequate computer-assisted dietary assessment tool for older adults from diverse background in India, and eventually to investigate relations between diet and cognition, MCI, and dementia. With that, I have set the stage, and now I will hand over to Dr. Alka to carry on and discuss in detail about the LASI-DAD food frequency questionnaire. Dr. Alka, would you like to share?
Yeah, I'll try to share.
Oh.
Sorry for the delay. Thank you very much, Dr. Joyita, and good evening, good morning to everybody, and a very happy new year again. So as mentioned by Dr. Joyita, that the solution is to develop a food frequency questionnaire, and definitely the dietary assessment, the intake and the dietary intake assessment is very, very challenging, especially in India, where there exists a diverse cuisine, a wide variety of regional and cultural food habits and practices. Thus, we need to have an assessment tool which incorporates all the regional variations and also in different languages, which will be able to cover whole of India. Now, coming to the various methods, interviewing methods which exist to capture this food consumption or dietary assessment in dietary surveys. The oldest method being pen and paper interview, in which the data was collected on paper. But with the recent technological innovations, an interviewer can ask respondent questions from a tablet which is pre-loaded with dietary questionnaires. And this new method offers a lesser cognitive burden, reduces the length of interview time, it is cost effective, it has drop-down options, it has standardized coding, it helps in data analysis, and there could be real-time monitoring as well. For the interviewer who is using the CAPI to get the dietary assessment from food frequency questionnaire, it is important that we have this interviewer trained well, so that especially on topics which include the application, the interview technique, ethical considerations, participant rights, reading, understanding the questions, techniques, so that we reduce the under or over reporting. So it had been decided that a 2-day training program and a certification would be done for interviewers for doing the dietary assessment using FFQ. In addition to training, a standard operating procedure manual would be provided to the trainer or to the interviewer, which gives instructions and which can guide the interviewer how they need to complete each section. And it would also, the manual would describe the background of the study, the field work, the protocols, the troubleshooting during the data collection and the data processing, etc. But as we all know that an assessment, a tool is only meaningful if it is timely monitored for quality control, which is very, very important aspect of assessment. So for maintaining quality of data, to identify the bias and tools which are part of processing, quality control and processing is an important aspect of the dietary assessment. Now, coming to keeping all these points in view, all these views in perspective, the first step when we make a food frequency questionnaire is to get the food list. So the food list was developed, which was based on inputs from nutrition experts, regional representatives. As we've already mentioned, that India with a diverse, with a varied kind of cuisines, so we needed to get the regional representatives and nutritional experts giving us the different food list. So an extensive food list was compiled and a prototype was constructed with different sections. The second aspect of food frequency questionnaire is the frequency, as has been mentioned by Dr. Joetha. So the present FFQ included 9 different response categories to capture their usual frequency of consumption of a standard serve of food or beverage over a period of 12 months. The selected frequency category for each food item can be converted into daily intake as well. Along with food list and the frequency, a very important part of a semi-quantitative food frequency questionnaire is the portion size. So the quantifying of portion size is very, very important. Standardized measures or utensils like glasses, bowls, which is commonly called katori in India, teaspoon, tablespoon, they were used to determine the portion size. For circular items like roti, puri, a set model was developed to show to the respondents. And some items, for example, bread, biscuit, they were recorded as integer multiples. And raw vegetable, fruits, they were recorded as the average serve size. Last but not the least is the seasonal variation. So capturing the seasonal variation is also very, very important, because we do know that there is a noticeable variation in the diet in India depending on the seasonal agriculture produce. And many fruits and vegetables consumed only in specific seasons. So that is why a seasonal converter was developed, which helped the interviewers accurately translate seasonal consumption into average frequency over the last 12 months. And interviewers were trained to use this converter to avoid over and underestimation. The next section here on the slide talks about the overview of food frequency questionnaire, and that is apologies. There are 4 sections which are there in the food frequency questionnaire. Section A deals with the purchasing, the cooking, etc. Whereas it also had the questions with regards to fat, milk, sugar, and salt intake, and some questions on dietary habits, whether alcohol consumption, whether vegetarian or non-vegetarian. Moving on to the last 2 sections, that is the section C and D, were questions on multivitamins, supplement use, and different types of Ayurvedic preparation as well. Section D dealt with the frequency of spices used. Those were selected which were potentially relevant for brain health. So 7 spices were used and their frequency was checked in. Section B, which is the major portion of the food frequency questionnaire, had around different food groups. You can see the different categories, be it cereal, pulse, dairy, vegetables as raw vegetables or cooked vegetables, fruit, then meat, poultry, eggs and fish, nuts, confectionery and sweets, savory snacks, beverages, alcohol, chutneys and pickles. So intake of different group of food and beverages, the different categories, and under each of these groups, various food items were mentioned. Then standard portions demonstrating using measuring containers were mentioned, and regional names of each food items were displayed. For example, in green leafy vegetable, for example, if we talk about the regional names for spinach, it could be palak, saag, pui saag, velidi. So different names depending on which state the person, the interviewer is interviewing the respondent. Also, each section where the cereal had the staple as wheat, rice, cereal pulse combination or millets, the pulses had different categories of whole dals, washed dals, etc. Confectionery desserts could have milk-based sweets, non-milk-based fried sweets, chocolates, and others. So we had a different list of foods under each category. Coming to the timeline or the process of development of the LASI-DAD food frequency questionnaire, the process started from 2017 when the prototype LASI-DAD FFQ was developed, which was pre-tested on smaller and larger number of population. And accordingly, the modification were done, which was further pilot tested in 2022 May, and the final modification was done. Post that, the data was collected from November 2022 to 2024, and we were able to get the data, which was then cleaned and analyzed. But various challenges were faced when we were preparing, when we were doing the pre-testing and pilot testing, and accordingly, based on the problems, the modifications were done. Certain modifications like respondent fatigue, comprehension barriers, household dynamics, and portion confusion was observed. For example, the total number of food items initially were around more than 200. But we do know that this LASI-DAD diet study is not a standalone study, but it is a continuum study with other main assessments as well, like cognitive test, geriatric assessment test, and other portions of the study. So we had to be aware of or careful of the respondents' fatigue. So because of that, we had decreased the total number of food items from 234 to 88 in the modified FFQ. Also, the total time taken in interviewing also got reduced from 55 minutes to 31 minutes. Looking at the comprehension and household dynamics, it was seen that older respondents couldn't answer many a times the purchasing questions, or because of the failing memory, they were not able to answer all questions. So in that case, it was decided that a diet informant, the person who knows more about the purchasing, cooking for the respondent, would be part of the questionnaire and would be along with the respondent answer the questions. So it was more of an informant assisted interviews. When we did earlier with the prototype, the food frequency questionnaire with different portion sizes, different multiple utensils, that caused more confusion and it was more cumbersome. So that is why a single standard size katori or glass were used in the later modified LASI-DAD FFQ. Further streamlining of LASI-DAD FFQ included the skip option so that we do not have overlapping, we could save time and reduce confusion. There was more comprehensive training time was included as part of the overall training, which also had a mandatory certification test, and inclusion of dietitian in all field teams was incorporated. Certain sections in the FFQ were also redefined. For example, in the cereal section, it was restructured into staple cereals, cereal pulse combinations, millets, and ready to eat. And the last section on spice, that was shortened. It was a longish, exhaustive spice list, which was reduced to 7 items, which is used for medicinal and therapeutic purposes after pilot testing. Those were ginger, garlic, turmeric, cinnamon, green chili, red chili, and fenugreek seeds. So with this, we could get a unique LASI-DAD food frequency questionnaire, which was a single, but it had a comprehensive questionnaire which could cover the different aspects, the diversity, culturally, as well as food-wise and age-appropriate, and it was quality assured as well. We could see at the end of the wave 2 sample, we had approximately 4,465 respondents across 22 Indian states who were interviewed, whether it was male, female, or rural, urban, all the areas were covered. The response rate was around 97%. This was achieved across all states with comprehensive quality control. My next speaker would be talking about data processing, automated coding, and food composition database. But before that, I would just like to acknowledge certain limitations like recall bias, especially in the older population, and also the nuances of the diverse food preparation methods, which still remains a challenge and one is still likes to streamline further for that. I would like to hand over to Dr. Daniel Logan for the data processing and automatic coding. Just wanted to mention that for any further more information, you could refer to this paper as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Alka. I'll just try to share my screen now. Hopefully you can see that okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Danielle, for those who don't know me, and I'm part of the LASI-DAD diet team alongside Dr. Joita and Dr. Alka and Dr. Claire McAvoy, who unfortunately can't be with us on the call today. So I won't spend too much time talking about the background, as we've already heard, the importance of having this investigation into nutrition in older adults in India. But I really just wanted to highlight that India's ageing population is facing a double burden of malnutrition. And what this means is that we do have both nutrient deficiencies, but also then some people consuming too much nutrients, leading to potentially obesity. And this can lead to high rates of diet-related disease. And don't want to obviously repeat what Dr. Joita has mentioned, but really just the reasoning behind us developing this food composition database is because previously there has been poor infrastructure in place to assess dietary data. And ultimately now we have this amazing resource within LASI-DAD of over 4,000 older adults, and it's a nationally representative sample. And as we've heard, we have a food frequency questionnaire from these older adults. So what we wanted to try and do was to develop this food composition database that would allow us to convert that dietary data from the food frequency questionnaire into nutrient intake estimates. So you will see in the next few slides how we have done this, but our main source has been the Indian food tables, and ultimately within these tables, they provide raw nutrient data. So we do have to be aware of that, and I'll explain more in a few slides' time. But to our knowledge, basically a nationally representative food composition database with adequate nutrient coverage remains unavailable. And this is why we are exploring that further. So today I'm going to be describing the development of this database for nutrient analysis of food frequency questionnaire dietary data among older adults in LASI-DAD. And I will give you some preliminary results of what we're sort of seeing in the data so far as well. So figure 1 sort of is a summary diagram of the key steps that were involved in the development of the nutrient database. And I should say that this was very much in collaboration between ourselves in the UK and our Indian colleagues, as we very much appreciated their dietetic expertise. And we were able to use a web-based nutritional software for this database, which is known as Nutritics. So the first step in this process was first of all to basically import the Indian food composition tables into the web-based Nutritics platform. So once we had that within the system, our next step was to do what we call food and beverage matching. So every single item within the food frequency questionnaire that Dr. Alka mentioned, we had to decide on the most appropriate, culturally appropriate match for those items. So this very much was a collaborative process, and we tried to maximize the use of the Indian food composition tables, which I will show you in another couple of slides. But if we did have to use other databases, our next preference was the UK food composition tables. And just really to point out that, as Dr. Alka said, we had to combine some foods together, due to respondent fatigue. So if we did have some foods in a category combined together, if those items were very similar nutritionally, we were able then just to pick one match. However, if some of the items combined together were slightly different nutritionally, sometimes we had to take an average of a couple of different food matches just to make sure that everything was appropriate. So the next step, we have our portion sizes. So for every item in the food frequency questionnaire, we had to determine what was the standard raw portion size, but also the edible portion size of each item. And if we did have some items grouped together, we were able to calculate an average portion size. So ultimately, the edible portion size is what we use to determine the approximate daily gram intake of those food and beverages per day. In step 4, nutrient mapping, what this means is within the food composition tables in India, which is a brilliant resource, unfortunately it's missing vitamin B12 and iodine. So for those items that we matched to the Indian food composition tables, we didn't want to have no data on B12 or iodine, so we were able to fill those results from other international databases, with the UK food tables being the best match. In step 5, this basically refers to any cooked items that were within our food composition tables. So what we did here was if we had a food that someone actually consumed as cooked, we used a conversion factor to convert that data into cooked data, because whenever foods are cooked, it can affect the micronutrient content. So we wanted to make sure we weren't overestimating or underestimating different micronutrients. And point 6 was just to get across that this was very much an iterative process of checking our dietary and nutrient intake data. And we had lots of cross-checks between us. And in step 7, ultimately, this has allowed us to produce dietary data. Well, we have dietary data that, has been able to be converted into nutrient data per 100 grams and also the edible portion size. So within nutritics, the main nutrients of interest that we have access to is shown on the screen. So we've got energy and calories, our kilojoules. We have our macronutrients, your protein, your fat, your carbohydrate. We have our fat components, like saturated fat, mono, polyunsaturated. You have your different minerals, sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, etc. And then you have various vitamins and other components. So that's just to give an overall summary of the key nutrients that we have access to within nutritics. So just to sort of give a little bit more detail on the food matching, you can see here in figure 2 that 62.7% of the items in the food frequency questionnaire were matched to the Indian food composition tables. However, we did have to match some to other international tables, with the UK tables coming in second. Some were matched to the USA tables and then Singapore. So ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we had to combine foods together, use a couple of different matches to get the most appropriate match. And in this case, we had to do it for 24 items, whereas we had 83 items where we were able just to match to a single food item as the most representative match. And if we didn't have any nutrients, then we mapped it to another nutrient database, and that's in particular the iodine and the B12. So figure 3 shows that across all the different food categories that were within the food frequency questionnaire, the red, as you can see, the majority of the items within each of these categories were matched to the Indian food composition tables. But for example, some beverages weren't available in it, so we had to match it to other tables, and some confectionery and desserts as well. But I just really wanted to show this to give an idea that we did really maximize the use of the Indian food tables, but we had some complementary use of the other international databases. So just I thought it would be of interest to show some preliminary results of what we're seeing in the nutrient data at present. As mentioned earlier, this is preliminary, So we do need to explore these results a bit further, but just to give you a little bit of an insight into what we're seeing so far. So figure 4, this shows us the mean intake in grams per day of selected food groups by the Indian region. So we've divided it into the 5 different regions across India. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of sort of trends that we're seeing here in this graph. So if we look at the right-hand side for milk, the highest intake on average for milk is seen in the northern region, which is typically what we would expect to see. You can see that the cereal intake in general is, in general quite similar across the 5 regions, as you would expect. Vegetables intake is highest in the eastern region, and fruit intake was highest in the western region. So we will be exploring this a bit further, but it just gives you a bit of an idea of the sort of the spread of the types of food groups that are being consumed in the 5 regions. We have been able to develop our bespoke food composition database for the LASI-DAD dietary data. It has been based on the food frequency questionnaire, but additional food and beverage items could be added to this. But ultimately, we do have representative nutrient data from across diverse socioeconomic groups across 22 states in India. And hopefully this infrastructure that we've developed will help to assess nutritional intake in older Indian adults and improve the nutrient or the dietary infrastructure as well. One point to note is that during the process, we weren't able to do lab analysis of cooked foods, and that would have been more accurate. But as previously discussed, there is such variation in recipes and things across the regions, so we weren't able to do that. And at the present time, the preliminary results are showing there is some variation in region and gender nutrient intake, but this is going to be explored much further. And sort of the key next steps for myself and Claire at present, and we have submitted the nutrient database paper to a journal and it's under review. And we are working on our baseline characteristics paper to describe the dietary intake of the LASI-DAD older adults. So hopefully we will have further information on that soon. But thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Thanks, everybody. It was a very informative presentation. I'm afraid that there are so much details and it will be very hard to get a full picture, even for me, but this presentation definitely helped us. Perhaps we should invite any questions from the audience, and hopefully the diet team can provide some answers too. So I think Dr. Joita, you already answered one question from the audience. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I think the question was on the good response. Yeah, I think we have our field team and the the interviewers to thank. They have been trained very well, and they could get the response. And maybe since we have worked on the food frequency questionnaire and consolidated it in such a way that it was easy to ask and capture the answers. And also, yes, we have reimbursed the participants for the time they gave us for this diet questionnaire. I think that was the question.
Thank you, Joita.
I don't see any other questions.
So we do plan to release this diet data for wider research community in coming months. So we'd like to invite all the webinar participants to look at the data and provide us feedback and how we can further improve. I know we have worked a lot in thinking about further follow-up validation studies. So I think we definitely want to plan to do that in the next project cycle. So let's have another conversation, Diet team. And I thank you again for your excellent presentation today and finding the time. And also welcome all the webinar participants. Again, today's slide deck will be available on our project website. And please do make a reference and invite others. Thank you, and have a good night for colleagues in India, and have a good day for our colleagues in the US.